welcome to Build Weekend Watch, the show that begs the question, how do we all just keep living our daily lives in a moment where everything seems hell-bent on planetary destruction and human extinction? Just kidding. We talk about TV shows and movies. Joining me today are editor and writer and all-around good guy Chris Rosen and senior writer for Yahoo Entertainment and also swell dude as well, Ethan Alter. Round of applause, everybody. I'm Ricky Camilleri, by the way. First up, we have Widows, the latest film from Oscar-winning director Steve McQueen. When a group of criminals get killed during a heist, Viola Davis must take over as the incredible badass we know her to be. Take a look.
Our husbands aren't coming back. We're on our own. My husband left me the plans for his next job. All I need is a crew to pull it off.
Why should we trust you anyway?
Because I'm the only one standing between you and a bullet in your head.
That's what I've learned from men like your late husband and my father, is that you reap what you sow.
Let's hope so.
I just said it like Copland, but good. This movie swings for the fences in story. And, you know, I don't know if it hits a grand slam, but it comes pretty damn close. You've seen it as well.
I mean, I'm all in on this movie. I have no compunction about saying that. It's probably top 10 bound. It's really
100%. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, it's just from a casting level to an execution to direction. I mean, this to me, what I love about it is it fits into the genre of the city crime drama that we get from The Departed, The Town, going way back to the 90s, City Hall, Prince of the City. You know,
it feels like a movie out of the 90s, and I don't mean that in the sense that it's nostalgic. I mean that in the sense that a studio gave a good filmmaker and writer the money that they needed to tell the story of corruption within a city. Right. From like the street level all the way up to the politician level, covering all of those stories. And when I say that maybe it doesn't hit the grand slam, it's only because it's committed to also being entertaining and not being a three-plus hour movie. Right. So there are some pieces that get sort of short shrift here and there. But that's just because the movie wants to be good and wants to keep going. And so, yeah, it's fantastic.
And I think we have to sort of, it's not the movie at all I expected from Steve McQueen, which is the other thing that's really fun to point out.
He's still there.
Right, he's still there, right. I mean, the signature shot, I think sums up so many of the themes you're talking about, is it starts on a campaign rally and then goes to Colin Farrell, who plays a Chicago mayoral candidate or political candidate. It goes to his home after that, and it's a single shot, camera stays on the outside of his car as he goes from the rally to his home, and it without cutting while we hear them talking, and that sort of encapsulates this idea of how mere blocks separate huge inequalities in income, class, and also corruption. And
can we also say the thing about that shot? I think a lesser filmmaker than Steve McQueen would have done more to that shot to make it even more showy. Right. Would have gotten in the car, gotten out of the car, would have gotten on some sort of crane, and Lord knows he had the money to do that with this movie, and all he did was just sit the camera on the car, pan to the left, pan back, pan to the right. And that's all that he did. I mean, it's not a shot that costs that much money at all to do, and it tells the story of the whole movie and the story of America right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
So I haven't seen it, but I cannot wait to see it.
You want us to tell you more about what happened?
I've read a bunch about it.
I'll tell you
know about
every
this
single
shot.
plot twist, right?
But I will say it's fascinating to me. This is Steve McQueen's first film since he won an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave. I think this is like the ideal situation that I want from like a director who pops in a way like he did after 12 Years a Slave. He wins an Oscar. Obviously, that's a great movie, so well directed. And then instead of doing like a Marvel movie or like a superhero movie or a Fantastic Beasts
or First Man,
it's like, oh God! Instead of doing something like that, oh no, Ethan, stop! It's over. First Man is crashed. That is over. No, we get to see like this incredible, like it's a, like you said, like it's positioned as a very big crowd pleasing, you know, kind of like 4-quadrant movie, let's say, but it's like not a superhero movie. I'm like so excited about that he was able to like take, like seeing this kind of movie. This is like the quote kind of movie they don't make anymore, which we hear a lot of. And I feel like that he did get to make it with this all-star cast. And like, it just seems, it's like, I'm weighing on this. I really hope it does well because we always get to these situations where if it doesn't do well, maybe they're not going to take another chance on movies like this. But I think they will, and I just think I'm very excited to see this. So,
can we talk about just sort of how deep some of the story runs in this movie as well, where you could get kind of granular and start talking about how certain characters are clear representations of different aspects of society right now, not just in terms of the fact of what race they are, but how they're talking about a certain situation and where their lives end up and where the country is at this point. I mean, you can get very film schooly with this in regards to how people are symbolic representations of certain things that are happening politically, or you could just enjoy the movie because they just robbed a rich person.
Yeah, it looks like Heat to me. Like that's what the trailer to me is like, we let Steve McQueen make a Michael Mann movie that would have been awesome. So
yeah.
But it does not.
I'm sorry, it's no Heat.
Oh man! All right.
I would put it on par with you. I'm not the biggest Heat fan, so that's okay. So
are you out of your
I respect Heat,
goddamn
but
mind, Ethan?
Miami Vice greater than Heat, but that's
no
a
way.
conversation
I mean,
for
Miami
another
Vice
time.
is great.
Okay.
I'm sure we're all Miami Vice fans here, but
I'm really sorry. The rest of the show is shut down. We're just here to yell at Ethan about this bad
Heat is
opinion.
so
No,
good.
best opinion. Best
No,
opinion.
I mean Miami Vice. Come on, you love Miami Vice.
I love Miami Vice.
We're probably
Better
3
than
of the
Heat.
50 people who really like Miami Vice.
No, that is not true. I mean, I think
It had a cultural revolution.
Boys who like movies
Boys who like movies,
Miami Vice.
yeah, definitely like a boy movie. But Heat is so much better than that movie. Come on.
No.
I rewatched Heat like a month or two ago.
I watch clips of Pacino in Heat all the time. It's hilarious.
It's
He
a
is the
great
best.
movie. Yeah. When's the last time you watched Heat?
It's been a minute. I'll admit. I've
Okay,
watched
so then
Miami
maybe
Vice more
in that
often,
minute you
but-
realize it's a better movie than Miami Vice.
For what to watch this week, we all recommend Heat.
We all
Yeah,
so that's great.
Specifically that I watch Heat. That seems to be the.
If you've never seen Michael Mann's Heat, you can just go watch that.
It
and you'll-
deserves to be in the conversation because it certainly had a huge influence, and you can see its influence on this movie. But I still point to the movies that I really love seeing it reflected in this. Are The Departed, are Prince of the City, are those things which I think are the sort of creme de la creme of city crime symphonies. And
I'm here for Departed. So.
Right.
Widows reminded me that The Dark Knight was shot in Chicago.
Yes.
Right? Like I had totally forgot because it's Gotham or whatever that was a movie.
Yeah.
But you watch Widows and most of it takes place at night in Chicago and you are reminded of The Dark Knight, which is a sort of a compliment to how well Nolan kind of how much he made that city sort of iconic with that film.
Yeah.
I just that's all I got.
Good. That's a good note.
Is that good
No,
note?
let's end it
Thanks
there.
so much, guys. That's the show.
Two really quick casting notes I just want to say. I mean, there'll be a lot of praise for Viola Davis, deservedly. Colin Farrell's also really good, but the two performances I was really impressed by. Yeah, exactly. The performances I was really impressed by were one, Michelle Rodriguez, who I think it's easy to forget since joining the Fast and the Furious franchise, she's become the action heroine, and she's great at that. But I think this movie taps back into what we saw in Girl Fight, where she can be both ferocious but also have this really intense dramatic presence. And I think this movie employs that really well. And then the only other cast person I love seeing again was Lucas Haas, who between this and First Man is having a major fall. His sightings are rare of Luke Haas, but whenever he's there, I'm always happy to see him. So Haas-a-sans.
Did you get the sense, though, Robert Duvall also gives a great Robert Duvall performance in this?
Yeah.
In the sense that they got him on set and were just like, you're a bad person and you yell at everybody. No need to know lines.
Right.
Just go ahead. And he just gets into every scene and does seem like he does not know his lines and is just screaming at people. It's wonderful to watch.
It really is. No,
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah, they just let him go.
Widows is great. Go see Widows this weekend. And I mean, everyone should go see it as well because if it does well, movies like this can continue to get made. And it's a rarity that a studio would give anybody, no matter what award they won, the money to make a movie like this and the cast to make a movie like this. But we gotta move on. Fans of J.K. Rowling, rejoice! The sequel to Fantastic Beasts is out today, and I'm sure you guys are ready to blaze the internet with remarks of how disappointed or happy you were with it. Either way, a bunch of people made a lot of money, including one guy who, according to reports over the last couple years, really needs it. Check out the trailer for Crimes of Grindelwald.
The wizarding and non-wizarding worlds have been at peace for over a century. Grindelwald wants to see that peace destroyed.
You want me to hunt him down? To kill him? Dumbledore, why can't you go?
I cannot move against Grindelwald. It has to be you.
Hi.
We're back. We're still talking about Miami Vice and Heat.
No, we were having the conversation we should have been having in front of the audience during the trailer. We got caught.
Yeah.
I have not seen this. I saw the first one. I thought it was fine. It's not for me. It's for families. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was actually okay. I mean, it's gotten terrible reviews, seemingly. Not a lot of fans in the critical world of this film. But I actually liked it more than the first Fantastic Beasts. I think it kind of completely just washes away anything you might remember about the first Fantastic Beasts in a really hilarious way. Like, you know, they set up, obviously this film has young Dumbledore or middle-aged Dumbledore played by Jude Law. They kind of set up that he actually was like pulling the strings on Newt's original visit in New York. I don't even feel like that's a spoiler because you might not remember that Newt came to New York in the first film. He's played by Eddie Redmayne. They at the end of the first film, like Jacob is a character, I believe. What's his name?
Credence.
Not Credence. Who is Dan Fogler play?
Yeah, Jacob is.
He, at the end of the first film, he has his memory wiped, and you're like, oh boy, how's he going to remember? And then this film, he shows up and he knows everything. He's like, it didn't work. It's like, all right, great screenwriting. I mean, can't knock the hustle. But yeah, no, I really thought it's okay. It's a very convoluted plot. It's definitely for the fans. I feel like there's a lot of fan service in it, but the fan service actually doesn't necessarily pay off. If you know anything about Harry Potter, wand lore, like with the Elder Wand, Grindelwald, or Grindelwald, as they say in the movie, has the Elder Wand, but how did he get the Elder Wand, and should he have full power of the Elder Wand? Those are questions that maybe the first film asked. Ricky is falling asleep. But basically, it's about a bunch of different factions trying to find Credence, played by Ezra Miller, who is a very compelling screen presence. He's not really in the movie as much as I would have liked, honestly. Right. It's a very small role. They have him set up for tremendously big things at the end of the film. It ends on a pretty ridiculous cliffhanger that I think will spark those internet conversations ablaze for fans of Harry Potter for the last 20 years. I mean, it's like kind of like a game-changing twist. But yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, like, I think families will like it, but at the same time, it's also crazy violent where they're like, there's like a whole family just gets, no, this is not even a spoiler because they have no point in the story or anything, but they just murder a whole family, including like a little baby. So just be aware that it's not as family friendly as you might expect.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I ask, is this tracking as well as the first Fantastic Beast was? And are we seeing a bit of, I mean, with what happened with the last few Star Wars movies that came out, are we seeing a kind of exhaustion with some of these franchises?
It seems like it's set to open well. I think they're saying 65 million. I don't remember what the original opened to. I think this one, the fact that they're not trying to do multiple episodes of this, like with Star Wars, where they tried to branch out and make the Star Wars Adventures in addition to the main episodes. This is just really a chapter of a Wizarding World every 2 or 3 years. Helps with that a little bit.
There weren't any books for it beforehand.
No,
That's what there's no like built-in. I mean, these are movies that they're just making beyond the point of
right. But she actually, J.K. The difference between this is like J.K. Rowling is actually the author. She wrote the script for the first one. Right. She wrote the script for this one. She is definitely guiding it.
Right.
It does feel a lot like, to me, it's sometimes as extraneous as like the Hobbit movies were, where they don't need to exist. It's stretched out to incredible. I mean, there's going to be supposedly 5 movies in this series, so there's 3 movies left after this one, and this feels like just a middle act. It kind of reminds me of like a Netflix show where you're just watching it, and things are happening that you know will probably pay off. Like, let's give J.K. Rowling benefit of the doubt. She probably has mapped out in her head why the twists and turns that happen in this film will pay off in the later films. But if you're just watching this as a film, it's not completely satisfying on its own. I think there are some fun aspects, Jude Law being among them. I think he's incredible as like young Dumbledore, middle-aged Dumbledore. He's not that young anymore, let's be real. I mean, Jude Law looks great, but, you know, come on. And he's great in it, and I love the Dumbledore stuff in the movie. The most compelling parts are hilariously when they're at Hogwarts, which maybe is a sign that they should have just done, you know, James and Lily Potter the early years instead of doing Newt Scamander and the Fantastic Beasts. But
I think that's my big problem with this movie, to a certain extent, is that Newt and Jacob, the characters from the first movie, don't really need to be in this one. There's no real reason we have to revisit them. And the problem with the structure of the movie is the first 90 minutes is spent moving these characters around who ultimately have no real purpose in the narrative. The last 30 minutes are where we get to what the story's actually about. And that's when it becomes Empire Strikes Back called and Wanted Fantastic Beasts back. That's really where you see what they're aiming for. But the most interesting character in that part is the Zoe Kravitz character, who sort of was teased in the first one, gets a bigger part in this one, and sort of has the most tragic part of the story. And that's the part that I think emotionally connects, both because of her performance, and it's the one piece that actually feels like of a piece with the story they're telling here, whereas everything else is very extraneous.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
And he's still awake.
Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali star in the new Peter Farrelly-directed film Green Book, based on a true story. Mortensen plays a bouncer hired to escort a talented black pianist, Dr. Don Shirley, to play a concert tour from the East Coast to the Deep South. Imagine Kingpin, but about race. Here's a quick look.
This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here. I'm afraid not.
He's the main event.
Either I eat in this room or I'm not performing tonight.
Come on, get out now.
You never win with violence. You only win when you maintain your dignity.
I didn't like the way he was treating you.
I've had to endure that my entire life. You should be able to take it for at least one night.
First off, I had said based on a true story. I'm going to have to strike that, and then I just want to ask this question. What does inspired by a true friendship mean? That is the tagline of the movie. How far stretched from based on a true story do you think inspired by a true friendship is?
And they're two real people. And they are or were friends, so I guess that is the starting point.
And the son
one time
of one
I
of those
gave him a
friends
ride, and they made a movie about it.
And he was, that's a good impression of Tony Lip.
Yeah, there you go. They should hire you.
Tony Lip played Carmine Lupertazzi in The Sopranos.
Right.
So the guy Viggo
really?
Mortensen is playing is a legitimate guy named Tony Lip, who later went on to play Carmine in The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
And Carmine...
I don't remember Carmine that well. He was definitely old.
Right. Was
That's his main thing. His
Carmine the
character
character who was married to Jeannie, the sort of
I
overweight wife?
think so.
That Joe Pantoliano character was making fun of, and it turned into a whole thing.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
Sounds right.
it's one of my favorite relationships on the show. if I
Great
remember
show.
correct. Great show.
Another
The
great
Sopranos, guys,
recommendation.
a great show.
What to watch, Sopranos.
Exactly.
Great
This
show.
weekend.
What I heard, it's also inspired by true friendships.
That's actually
Yeah.
real true friendships. Yeah.
Even so, you've seen Green Book. Tell us about it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I saw this
what
about the
we're paid
movie.
to
Now, let's
do.
talk more about The Sopranos. I saw it at the Toronto Film Festival. It was interesting. I saw it as part of a piece with If Beale Street Could Talk and The Hate You Give. It was interesting watching this movie in relation to those two movies because those are films about race made by African-American filmmakers for wide audiences. I feel like this movie is very much aimed at a white audience about a time in American
Wide
history.
or white?
White
Okay,
audience.
so
You
first
can
was
tell,
wide.
yeah.
This is white.
This is a very wide white audience.
Can we also
I
say
would
old and white as well, maybe?
Maybe, although
Boomers?
it's also PG rated, so you could theoretically bring your kids to this in the same way, and mostly humor for a Farrelly Brothers movie is fairly gentle, I guess you could say. It's going for the Hidden Figures basically demographic, I think, which did manage to break out of the wider audience. But
I loved Hidden Figures.
oh yeah, Hidden Figures is sort of like
Hidden Figures are my favorite movies that year. Another recommendation, what to watch. Hidden
Exactly.
Figures, great movie.
It's trying to be the Hidden Figures and trying to appeal to the widest possible audience, but it feels like it's
Widest.
In that case, I'm saying widest,
Okay.
but it instead hits the whitest possible audience.
But
and that's an odd. It's an odd movie to watch because you're always very conscious of how they're telling the story and what they're leaving out because of the PG rating, because of who they're telling it to. It feels like they shave off the harsher details of what that time was like. I mean, even the title Green Book refers to the travel guide that African American people would have to travelers would have to use in the '60s to avoid places in the South that were known to be prejudiced, and that you
Like
never
hotels and restaurants and stuff.
things.
They basically had
Exactly.
like a book,
Right.
a green book,
There you
that
go.
had the locations of like you could go stay at this hotel because it allowed African Americans. Yeah.
Right. So that's mentioned there, but you never see the full insidiousness, I think, of racism.
Really?
It's always around the margins. I mean, you have the sort of moments where he is thrown out of places or not allowed to be in places, but it's always very broad and avoids some of the harsher truths, I think, and in the name of being crowd pleasing. I think that's one of the biggest issues I have with the movie, in that it really wants to be a movie about healing, about friendship, overcoming prejudice, and aspects of that, but it never really zeroes in on what that prejudice was, the insidiousness of it, and how it took root, and showing it to you. I think it's very circumspect.
What do you think made Hidden Figures successful in all these regards, while at the same time being as family friendly as Green Book wants to be, and doesn't make Green Book as successful?
I can tell you exactly. I think Hidden Figures is actually about the women. It's about Taraji P. Henson. It's about Janelle Monáe. Those women are the drivers of that narrative. Here, the driver of the narrative, because he's the driver, is Viggo Mortensen, and so he's the character who is sort of teaching even though he seems to start out as the most prejudiced character, he's the one that, oddly enough, is the one who is the most open-minded. It's supposed to show Mahershala Ali has to learn from him in some ways about what it means to be in a friendship, and that's just an odd place to come from in this kind of movie. Yeah, and you're just very conscious throughout that it's Viggo Mortensen's story is the one that's being told, when really the story should be Mahershala Ali's story and all the other places we travel through and the characters who are living there. So that to me is the biggest change. I think the fact that he's driving the narrative is why it doesn't achieve Hidden Figures quality.
Do you think the pitch for this was it's Driving Miss Daisy but flipped?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
And they were like, that will win all the awards.
And it's going to win a ton.
I don't think it will.
Well, it won't win, but I mean, I definitely think if you had to guess right now, like Viggo Mortensen is running as the best actor lead, which makes sense. He's the focus of the movie. Mahershala Ali is actually probably favored to win supporting actor based on the competition, unless like we're going to go back to Sam Elliott, who is wonderful in Star is Born, another recommendation for what to watch this weekend. But, you know, it's going to get like a lot of Oscar nominations, and I think it will be a humongous hit based on the fact that it's coming out, it's PG, it's coming out over Thanksgiving. You'll see a lot of family probably. That's like the movie that you're going to consensus be like, I could take my aunt to that, I could take my little sister to that, or my cousin to that, or my mom.
Right.
You know, families are definitely going to go flock to this unless they want to see like Wreck-It Ralph, which maybe they would, but I mean, that's a cartoon.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's going to do really well. I guess we'll see. I have not seen it either, but it does sound like legitimate gripes.
There are some, and just watching Viggo.
Sounds like gripes.
Right, exactly.
No, I mean, they sound.
We got to move on to the next one. Over the years, there have been a number of Vincent van Gogh movies, and out this weekend we have another one. It's called At Eternity's Gate. Director Julian Schnabel teamed up with Willem Dafoe to explore the journey of the famous painter. Take a look at the trailer.
There's something inside me. I don't know what it is. What I say, nobody else sees it.
You're a stranger here. You drink too much. You're hysterical, out of control.
I don't want to calm down. It's called the act of painting for a reason. Leave me alone! Go away!
Don't you see that this painting is unpleasant? The townspeople have signed a petition against you. They don't want you to come back.
I can't stay here, Vincent.
You're surrounded by stupid, wicked, ignorant people.
So that's the reason why you cut off your ear. Your vision of the world is quite frightening, isn't it?
Yes.
Take it away, Ethan.
Really quickly, I'm not a huge fan of this one. Unfortunately, it's great to see. I think Willem Dafoe is very good as Van Gogh. He joins a privileged few who have played that part and does it well. Interestingly, the movie it put me most in mind of was Last Temptation of Christ. I think that's one of the reasons he hired him.
So I have not seen it, but looking at the trailer, I was like, it's ripping off Last Temptation of Christ in a very major way. So
yeah, exactly. No, it's you can see the influence of that movie in this one quite a bit. And for it's interesting for an artist himself, Julian Schnabel. I think in this one, unlike in his first film Basquiat, which is really great, and another good recommendation to stream, he doesn't quite get at what makes art so special in this one. Somehow it feels very by the numbers, paint by numbers, if you will, as an artistic biopic. And so yeah, I just came away very sort of surprised it was such a conventional film from a director who's usually pretty unconventional. Yeah. So
well, let's move on to the next one. It's Friday, which of course means there's new stuff on Netflix. Out today is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the new 6-part Western anthology movie created and directed by the Coen brothers. I personally can't wait. I'm going to watch it tonight. Check out the trailer, though.
I had a dream last night while I was laying on my bed, and the whole world was turning red.
I can't wait. You guys have seen this. Don't spoil too much for me, like we do for everybody else when we've all seen something. But tell how great is it?
I loved it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. Honestly, I think it's just so good. It's an anthology, so there's 6 separate stories, so you don't have any connection between any of those stories that you saw. So like Tim Blake Nelson exists in his own story, Liam Neeson is in his own story, Zoe Kazan is in her own story. And some of them, your mileage may vary. I was really infatuated by all of them. I think have something really interesting to say. There's a Tom Waits one that's just incredible. That's just like Tom Waits for 20 minutes, like gold digging, and it's awesome.
Sold. Yeah.
Literally nothing else but him.
Actually, the show's canceled. I'm going to watch this right now.
But it's really good. It's like very much Coen-y. There's some dark humor. It's very much about the Old West and like both the cliches and tropes of the Old West and somewhat interrogating them, but not fully interrogating them, I'd say. That's maybe one of the blind spots of the film. But it's super entertaining. The way it's structured, honestly, you should watch it all in one sitting because it's a movie. But if you were like, I just want to watch like 2 of these, you can because it's on Netflix. It's like, it's a great movie. I was like weighing on all of it.
You know, you say that that's a blind spot of the film. I feel like that is a regular criticism of Coen Brothers movies, is that they don't fully interrogate their ideas. And I honestly think that they do that intentionally because it seems like a fear of doing that would leave the movie a little too satisfying and a little too bookended, and people wouldn't want to go back to it. And one of the things that I've always loved about Coen Brothers movies is that you can go back to them and get new ideas and new thoughts about them. And they don't really feel static.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's funny. I sort of felt like this is one of their better written movies and one of their better directed movies, if that makes sense. And I don't know.
Coen Brothers. What are you talking about?
Which is my unpopular opinions today. No, every now and then, I feel like this one, and I don't know if it's a limitation of the Netflix budget model or if it was intentional, but there are distractingly artificial elements at play in this one that I wasn't always sure were intentional. So there's some CGI stuff especially that felt, again, I feel like I should blame Netflix budgets, but maybe it was intended. But I think the pieces of even though each individual story is its own universe, I think the whole movie does tell an overall thematic arc, definitely involving about death and about violence in the Old West, and it builds to something. The last chapter is both its own thing, but also a summation on everything you've watched up to that point.
The last chapter is like one of the best, I'd say, extended 10-minute, 15-minute runs of movies I've seen this year. It's it's very tense and like really entertaining, and it's so small, and it's just like, I just loved it. It ends on a very big high note, which is also probably why I walked out of it on such a high. But I think the whole thing is really good. The Liam Neeson one is so weird, and like just like it's like the fact that it exists. This whole movie exists to me is like, this is the good of Netflix. Yeah. Like, you know, that they're just like, here's a Coen Brothers movie. I'll take all the Outlaw Kings in the world if we get like more movies like this. You know, it's just like, weigh in.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about another movie that we're all going to have the
that's
same
another
feeling
good one.
about because of Netflix. Like, yeah. Before we move on to TV, let's talk about some movies coming out while we're all eating turkey or tofurkey with our respective families. We have Creed 2, The Favorite, and Roma. First up, Creed 2. Ethan, what did you think?
I totally dug it. It's like Rockies 2 through 4 smushed into one sequel.
Does it have as many montages as Rocky 4?
It does not, sadly.
Then I don't want to watch it.
But it does have two really good montages, and it has this movie's answer to the James Brown sequence from Rocky 4. So I appreciate that. And there are also 2 amazing cameos that I did not expect were going to be in there, but they were, and I was very happy as a Rocky fan.
Are they cameos from 4 or from different?
I don't want to say anything more because it would spoil.
Don't spoil it.
They're from Rocky mythology. Is all I'll say.
Does Creed's father show up as a ghost or in a dream sequence or something? Because that would be kind of fun.
Wow, you just blew my mind.
Really
if that's in there, I
That'd be
can't wait.
great.
Top of the list for this one.
Carl Weathers' son. You have
He's
to
gonna
beat
be
him.
like, "Hey, Happy, I got my
There
hand
you go.
back." Remember from?
But really quickly, I mean, this is also Stallone. Like Stallone very much took back control of the series with this one. He co-wrote it, and it definitely feels more like a conventional Rocky movie than the first Creed did. But I love the conventional Rocky sequels; those are really fun. And this has this superhuman head punches. This has the weepy male melodrama. This has
Rocky 4 is one of the best worst movies I think of all time. I think top 5. I mean, that is a movie that is like 88 minutes long and contains like 5 montages, 3 of which contain either footage from previous films or films within the movie that we've already seen. Like, they literally only shot a 45-minute movie and then just had to cut pieces into it from previous movies.
And at least 3 or 4 minutes of this movie, of Creed 2, are from Rocky 4. So it is continuing that tradition as it should. No, Creed 2, I thoroughly enjoyed.
I love imagining Stallone being like, no one's going to know what they're watching if we don't put the movie from before in the movie now. Like, that's my favorite idea. And everyone going, yeah, man, whatever you want.
Your Stallone needs a little work, I'll say.
It sounded a little like Tony Lip.
I wasn't going
It's the same impression.
It's a Tony Lip impression.
It's a generic Italian impression, and I'm very sorry to Italian Americans for doing that to you. Okay. Up next, we have The Favorite, the new film from Yorgos Lanthimos that's starring Emma Stone, Rachel Weisz, and the absolutely great Olivia Colman, who people may know from Peep Show, from a movie called Tyrannosaur. She's in a ton of stuff. She's an incredible comedic actress as well as dramatic actress. You've seen The Favorite, right? I'm going to see it as soon as it comes out on Tuesday. What did you think?
I thought it was. I'm not as in love with it as a lot of other folks are. I mean, I think it's with Yorgos's movies. I tend to I find I like half of them. I never like the full thing. Like I like the first half of The Lobster. I like the second half of Dogtooth. This one, I think I'd like the first half more than the second half. But Coleman's terrific. I like her throughout in both halves. She's fantastic.
I loved all of The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I felt like The Lobster felt like 3 acts of different movies, just sort of combined and not one full story told. But yeah, I'm really excited for this because I love a show for Olivia Colman. She's just incredible.
She's really and Emma Stone also very good. No, it's a good performance piece. And in a strange way, I think it is his most conventional movie, and that's why I think it has a good shot at being a huge art house success because it is very much pitched in an art house lane.
Up next, one more before we move on to television. This is Roma, which what I was referencing when I said thank God Netflix is giving money to filmmakers to make whatever the hell they want. This is coming out in limited release next week over Thanksgiving. I think New York, LA, maybe Toronto and Mexico, and then maybe a couple more cities. And then it'll be hitting Netflix December 12th, I believe, sometime around there. And December 14th, thank you, Earpiece. I think the three of us agree, though, if you're going to see Roma, and you're in any of these cities or near them, travel to them, go see Roma on a big screen. It's shot 65mm Alexa. The sound design is incredible. And it's Alfonso Cuarón of Gravity and Children of Men making a epic personal film. Yeah. It's really special and incredible.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, but the filmmaking, it's just so incredibly well directed. It's like, I actually think it's his best directed movie. That's saying something considering Children of Men and Gravity are on his resume. I'd say both those films are actually, I enjoyed more than Roma, but I mean, it's just like a really great, really well-made movie. I said to you, I've been thinking about replaying scenes in my head over and over again. Some of the things I had issues with, I think if I saw it a second and third time would be maybe not as much of an issue where I'm, connecting with the characters. It's not as, in places, not as big-hearted as something like Beale Street Could Talk, which I I think is of a piece of this, but it's really great. You should definitely see it in the movie theater. I'd actually be curious to watch it on Netflix because I just don't know, it's not a plot movie, right? Like you're just sitting there watching stuff happen. It's just about people living their lives in a very heightened time period. So that's how timely it is now. It kind of does remind me a lot of how we just walk through our lives and there's massive deadly wildfires in California and we have a president who's just, lost the thread, to say mildly, and you're just kind of existing, right? Like you go through your everyday life, you're going to go to the grocery store, you wake up, you talk to your spouse, or you
host a show about movies and television.
Talk about movies, and Roma is literally about this, right? It's just about what we're doing as the world is burning, and I think that's really compelling. But yeah, I definitely would say you have to see it in a movie theater. I don't know how you watch it at home.
I don't know how you watch Roma at home either. It's just it'd be impossible.
You need to be enveloped in it. It's that kind of. I mean, I think it's the closest Cuarón's made to a Fellini film too. Like I just felt Fellini fit throughout that film in great ways. Knights of Cabiria, 8.5. There's a scene that reminded me right out of 8.5. It's really something to watch.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I've heard people say that, and I was looking for that while I was watching it, and I did not feel that at all.
New Year's scene.
I found the New Year's scene a little bit, but still with Fellini, it's a bit more alive and comedic all the time than Roma is. Roma's really missing that kind of the comedy of the carnival that that Fellini always had, and there's something always a bit more. I don't know. I can't think of another filmmaker. There was something that I thought of while I was watching it more so than Fellini. But yeah, I was missing some of the what?
Michael Mann.
Miami Vice. It was a lot like Miami Vice.
I got more Bay, to be honest with you. No, it was something I did miss. I wish there was a little more humor to a lot of the scenes in Roma. But I also at the same time hesitate to criticize it at all because it's just so beautifully made.
Right. And it's great that it exists.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It's a great movie. I do understand those. It doesn't have a great sense of humor about itself, but he wasn't in a great sense of humor type mood, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to other stuff on Netflix, but stuff that's actually going to be on Netflix. Also released on the dumping ground of content that is Netflix, we have the comedy series created by Chuck Lorre. It's called the Kominsky Method. In it, Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin star as two friends navigating love, family, and life in their later years. It's basically content for boomers. Roll the trailer.
We're all scared because it's a scary fucking world. But we get through it because we're not alone.
Who do I have?
Me, you dumb shit. Come on, Norman. You're just depressed. It'll pass.
It'll pass. My job doesn't fulfill me anymore, and I just put my 45-year-old daughter in rehab.
Dad! I don't want to be here! I'll be fine!
Just keep going.
So, you know, there's a number of movies made like this that are like Alan Arkin or Michael Douglas or Morgan Freeman or, I don't know, other old people who are, you know, bandying around some sort of hackneyed plot, and every joke is kind of like, my zipper's stuck, or like, I can't find my Viagra, honey. And like, they're just the cheapest jokes possible and the cheapest plot threads possible, but people love them because they love watching. I mean, everybody wants to feel represented on screen, you know, whether you are a young white man with glasses who loves movies, who feels like you're represented because Roma does everything you want a movie to do, or because you're, you know, a Hispanic person who feels like you don't get represented at all. I think old boomers like it too, and they love Viagra jokes. That's what this looks like to me. Is that what this is?
I would say it has more piss jokes than Viagra jokes. Having seen like multiple episodes, this has more toilet humor than any Adam Sandler movie to a certain extent. They talk about pee a lot, and they show peeing a lot.
Boomers, what is wrong with you? Like,
right? Like peeing is Chuck Lorre's obsession, I think. So that's going to be the next Big Bang Theory plot line. I'm expecting.
Do you think that was his big Netflix pull? He was like, "Oh, thank God, I can do more piss jokes on Netflix."
You haven't lived until you've seen Michael Douglas peeing into a bush. That's all. That's really all you need.
I haven't lived until I've seen that.
Exactly, until you've seen that. I promise you. Your life will be changed
from his butt and Basic Instinct to peeing in a bush next to Alan Arkin.
Yeah.
Get ready to start living.
Yeah.
That's what you have to look forward to. I will say Alan Arkin is terrific. I mean, he's always great. And he is so, his performance in this is so funny and acerbic, and he's playing Alan Arkin. That's why the boomers love watching Alan Arkin, because he's always Alan Arkin. But if you love Alan Arkin, it's great to see him being Alan Arkin, you know, even if he's peeing or not. He's just funny.
Now, you watched all 8 episodes of this.
Yes.
Wow.
It was
what kind of mood were you in when you began that? And
not
how
having
did
to
you
pee,
feel
I'll
when
tell
you
you,
ended?
I went from not having to pee to having to pee.
So you never got up in the middle of it?
I never got. I just watched it all the way through. I mainly came away impressed that Chuck Lorre was able to use his name to attract 2 stars of this caliber and have Netflix make something that ultimately does not really have a point or a story so much. It really is a sort of a hangout series, and you spend time with these 2 people. Stuff happens, but none of it's consequential. And when it ends, you're just like, and now we're done.
I feel like you're giving more credit to this than it deserves, in the sense that it was intentionally a hangout thing and nothing happened, and that Netflix could draw famous people to a famous. I mean, it just seems like, hey, I got a show idea. I got these 2 guys. Let's go figure out what it is. And Netflix has the money and throws it at them. I don't think it was like a Linklater style pitch.
Oh, no, absolutely no. It was definitely a case of like, here, we got it. It's the opposite of Grace and Frankie. Grace and Frankie, I think, I haven't watched it in a while, but in its first 2 seasons, it did a really good job taking these 2 icons and making them into real characters and building out a universe filled with really interesting, great, relatable characters. And this one is the opposite of that. It takes 2 great icons and basically lets them play themselves and doesn't really develop much beyond that.
Right, it's the difference between boomer women and boomer men. The boomer women do the work, and the boomer men are like, do it for me. Coming to Showtime this Sunday is Escape at Dannemora, the new limited series directed by Ben Stiller. It explores the real-life prison break of prisoners Richard Matt and David Sweat, and the woman who aided their escape, Joyce Tilly Mitchell. I loved every episode. Let's look at the trailer.
You focus on something in your mind. You feel it in your heart. And you commit to it. It will come true. For once in our lives, we're winning.
Whatever you knew them to be while they were in there, they're in a lot different circumstances now.
I have seen all the episodes of this. I had to interview the team that's on screen for it, and normally when I have to do that, even if it's like a 6 or 7 episode thing, I'll probably watch 3 or 4, and if I don't love it, that's what I'll watch so that I can do the interview.
Right here.
Yeah, this is how the magician reveals his laziness. But I could not stop watching this. It is Ben Stiller directs it, and he does an incredible job. The cinematography, the colors, his shots, his choices, and the way that he really lets Patricia Arquette and the man who plays her husband, Eric Lang, go for broke in their performances is not really like anything else that's on television right now. And it also rides a very fine line between sympathizing with these guys, holding them at an arm's length because they were murderers, and then also making fun of and loving and caring about the people who aided and abetted their escape, who are essentially these sort of like upstate small town people who work at a prison and you know, go to the same restaurant and live very sheltered lives, and you know, they are trying to escape from Dannemora as well, hence the title. And Patricia Arquette, give her every award. She's really incredible. Ethan, I know you've seen a couple episodes, and you're not totally sold on it.
Well, I think I'm just waiting for that moment where it goes next level for me. I mean, I've liked it. I think it's and with sort of a long form storytelling like this, you have to be aware the first few episodes are place setting. So I think the place setting is well done. I'm just waiting for that moment where it really goes, it escalates into something really special. And I think it can be, because Patricia Arquette's terrific. It's really well cast. I like Ben Stiller is really. I've always felt he's never had much of an identity as a director, but I think that serves him well here. Where
he's always been good, right? Like you look back at movies that he's made, and they're technically well made. Even like The Cable Guy is a cinematic movie.
Right.
It's corny and it's like over the top. I'm a fan actually, but I think it's still very well made. And this is his most well-made piece, and Showtime really threw money at him to make this. He has whatever he wants, and they shot it. All the exteriors in the yard are like the real Dannemora prison, and it's like all this like weird stone yard where guys are like doing push-ups and sit-up off of like stones in the back, and there's like these there's one incredible shot, I think in like the fourth episode, where Benicio del Toro and Paul Dano are essentially talking about their escape, and it's this long crane shot of them walking through the yard that starts really high up, and you get this huge aerial view of the prison that's thankfully not on a drone, and it slowly pushes in on them as they walk through this yard, and everybody's working out around them. It feels like one of the best budgeted and best directed limited series that I've seen so far, especially since Big Little Lies is no longer a limited series. We can say
it's
that.
a returning series. Yeah, I mean, I think what's great about Stiller, because I feel he doesn't necessarily have an identity, he's a great journeyman, and I think journeymen do really well at this kind of long-form storytelling because they've learned a lot over their times making movies, and they don't feel the need to impose themselves on the narrative. They can find ways to tell this story in really unique ways, but not having to feel that they have to define it. They have some auteurist label to live up to. So I think I'm enjoying looking forward to seeing more for sure.
You're gonna love it when it gets to the end. You're gonna love it. Are you gonna watch it?
Yeah.
Oh, goddamn.
I'm secretly not gonna watch anymore.
Come on, guys. All right, we have, I think, one more thing to get to here. Airing this Sunday is HBO's first original non-English series, My Brilliant Friend. It is inspired by the Elena Ferrante's international best-selling novel. The show focuses on the friendship between two little girls who met in Naples, Italy in 1950. Trailer, please.
Sono proprio contenta di vederti, Leno. Anche io.
Yo, that shit looked boring.
Come on.
I'm just kidding. I'm gonna watch this. I always think HBO does a really great job with. They're really one of the only, with the exception of Showtime now with Escape at Dannemora, one of the only networks that I trust with hour-long series. Thankfully, Prime and Netflix have gone down to 30 minutes, and things have gotten a little bit better. But HBO is really the only one that I find myself entertained by for a full hour. You've seen it.
I watched the first episode. I haven't read the book it's based on, so I can't speak to it as an adaptation, but it's the kind of sort of first episode that made me say I want to watch more of this for sure. It's very lived in. It feels like the opening chapters of Once Upon a Time in America or The Godfather Part 2, the early scenes in Italy, where you really get this sense of expanse and scope, and you're going to go on a real journey with these characters as they age. And there's mafia incident. There's young children.
The mafia.
Yeah, exactly. We know that. that?
Oh, were you looking for the voice?
Like, oh, he's gonna do the voice now.
Well, wait a second. It's got mafia. Sorry, I'm all in.
Right, exactly.
You guys can cut that part from the show. Make sure that doesn't exist on the internet for the rest of my life. Thank you. Go back and cut all the Italian impressions and remove them from the episode.
But yeah,
so
no,
have you read the books?
I have not. No, and so I can't.
We're still laughing at you. Like my transition. You have not read the books. I haven't read the books either. I mean, they're incredible. New York Magazine, I think a few weeks ago, put up their list of the sort of greatest books of the 21st century so far. And My Brilliant Friend, the series, was really high up there. All of the critics agreeing that it's a sort of a must-read series of books. I'm looking forward to watching it this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's really, the quality's there, the acting's there, and again, it feels like, strangely enough, it feels like it's a combination of Roma and Widows in terms of it showing this sort of small town setting with characters you don't often see, and then a crime element comes in as well, and it's also very much about the women and in this village and what life is like for them, removed from while the men are off doing their criminal activities, what they do and how they function in that society. So yeah.
All right, that sounds great. What are we picking for our top picks of the week and of Thanksgiving week next week?
I'm going to go with Buster Scruggs for this week, for sure. I just loved it. I thought it's so good. Coen Brothers can't really... I mean, the fact that there's a new Coen Brothers movie that anybody on Earth who has Netflix can watch right now is, like, pretty awesome, right? Like, I think that's just super compelling. And then for Thanksgiving, I'm going to go Roma, another Netflix movie, but you should see it in the theater.
I'm going to say Widows for this week because I think it's great. And as I was saying, we'd love to see more. And I just think every generation deserves its great crime movie. And we got Miami Vice before, and now we're getting this one. And then for
you know what? You might be right because Miami Vice came out in the 2000s. Heat's the 90s.
Yep.
So I'll let you get away with it. I know what you were trying to imply, but you know you can get away with it.
It's also accurate. And then and then for next week, I'm going to say Creed 2 just because I love Rocky. I love the Rocky movies. This one is not as good as the first Creed, just like the later Rocky movies were not as good as the first Rocky, but they work on a very visceral, fun level, and this one does as well. And Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson are just amazing. I will watch them do anything. They should reboot Over the Top next, as far as I'm concerned. Just keep rebooting Stallone movies because with those two throughout, it'll be great.
Over the Top.
I do as well, and that's why if they do it, I will be there for it.
Over the Top is one of the dumbest movies ever made. It is so great.
I think you mean most awesome movies.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 for the movie about the man who arm wrestles for the custody of his child.
It's a really true life. It was based on a true friend.
Inspired by a true
It was inspired by a true arm wrestle.
Inspired by a true body part.
True custody battle.
True friendship between a man and his truck. And that's how you know.
I'm going to go with Widows, which is a wonderful movie. Really reminds me of another great movie called Heat. And also this week I'm going to go with Escape at Dannemora because I haven't seen the new Coen Brothers yet, and I loved Escape at Dannemora. In some ways it reminds me of a Coen Brothers movie as it progresses, the way that it uses humor. And next week I'm going to go with Roma because it's really beautiful and you're never going to see anything like it again, nor was there anything before it. Guys, thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. Everybody, if you have seen Heat and you know that Ethan's wrong, look up his Twitter account, tweet him, DM him, find him, or go watch Heat now, and then DM him and tell him how great it was. Thanks so much for being here, guys. We have done our duty, and now you can go into the weekend knowing everything you can watch to take your mind off of all your nagging insecurities, unless your insecurities are your addiction to content and inability to connect with anyone outside of a screen. Then you're screwed, and I helped. Bye.